Humans of the cardboard, welcome back to Just Nuts, guys. Today we're talking about the brand new news revealed just a couple days ago. I already touched on it in one of the news videos, just kind of mentioning it because we had like more important things to get to, like full-on Ancient Gear support and full-on Lightsworn support all at the same time. But I wanted to come back to this because I think it deserves a full-on discussion, especially since we know we have some time before it comes out. So I wanted to get a little bit of my thoughts out there on what I want to see from some of this stuff here. So basically the big news here is that the next OCG Stories is confirmed to be based around Magistus, which is really cool. This is an archetype that I've had on my list that I've done on the video on the channel, talking about like archetypes that I think deserve support, will get support, should get support. And while it's not officially confirmed that we're going to get support, it like unofficially is. Sky Striker has been the OCG Stories focus for the last 2 years, for 2022 and 2023, and it's gotten 12 cards of support basically over that time. Someone mentioned in the other video when I said that like technically it hasn't, because the linkage and HAMP came out in like late 2021 before they were officially, before the OCG Story started with them. But I believe at that point it was already confirmed that they were in it. And so to me, that was almost like a get hype for this kind of like head start to the support, and give you a little something to help you get a little more like excited about Striker, and then they jump into the support. So I kind of find that to go hand in hand anyway. So I still count it, even though it wasn't technically during that run. But 12 cards in 2 years is an insane amount. Now, a lot of those weren't super playable. They had those handful of main deck monsters that were just kind of like super mid extenders that Strikers don't even really want to use until they got the newest one in this year's premium pack, like like a couple days ago, that officially dropped in the OCG. So that card was a really good extender. They've gotten Camellia, Azalea. The Link 4 is interesting. Linkage, obviously, at the very beginning of that. And now even 2 more links in this most recent wave. So they've gotten some good cards, but Striker was also way farther along. I think they wanted to make sure they were being careful. They know that this archetype isn't that far away. If they really wanted to, they could have made it insane. This is different because this is an archetype, or a base of archetypes, that really hasn't been all that good all that recently. And so I think they have a little more room to have a little more fun with this support and actually try to push these decks, push these engines. And I'm excited to see that. So if you don't know as well, Magistus is tied around a couple of other archetypes as well. They're all spellcaster based. So these are the 4 here shown with these artworks. The first one is Witchcrafter. I believe you can tell from like Magistus Vare, the Stratos the deck has, that it's tied into Witchcrafters, I believe. Next up you have Demian. You straight up have one of the monsters for Magistus that has Demian in the name. So that's cool. Invoked Crowley is apparently just young Alistair. When he gets older, he grows up and becomes a better mage, and then is Alistair summoning all these awesome beasts. And then you have Spellbooks, which I believe also Crowley. I think the Spellbook Link 2 is just literally Crowley again. So makes sense. But if you didn't know, all of these are kind of included in here, and I think that's the most exciting thing. And it's one of the reasons I thought it always would get support, Magistus, is that it has like 4 other archetypes. Not only that 4 other archetypes, but 4 like fan favorite archetypes. I know for a fact people love specifically Invoked and Spellbooks. I know there's like a sub category of players who really are just super fans of Witchcrafter, and then Endymion is just kind of like a pendulum safe haven. You know, any of those like pendulum loving players used to play it, but the reason it's kind of fell off was we just got better engines. And even though we didn't get specifically Endymion support for a long time, we did get a bunch of generic pendulum pushing cards. You know, the links, you know, Servant, and not Servant, the Link 3 Selene, and the newish Link 2 and stuff over time. But you know, we just found out that there were better pendulum engines basically, and it still hasn't even performed that well with the other engines. So that would be interesting to see. And let's actually talk a little bit more about how some of these individual archetypes. So for Magistus specifically, I think the coolest thing here would see some crossover cards that are actually good and playable. So maybe like we could get cards that start sharing names, and if they're actually good enough, then they can start connecting these engines in an actual meaningful way. Would actually be so sick. So in my mind, I'm thinking like I've seen some people mess around with spell books. They have Judgment back. That doesn't really matter that much. It's not really that amazing of a card. It's so slow in modern day, but whatever. The biggest thing for them is they just don't have monsters. So they could make some kind of Magistus / spellbook monster that just has both in its name. That way there's like some crossover synergy there. Or you make a spell card that not only has Magistus in its name, so it's searchable off of Ver, and then Ver maybe becomes playable in spellbook, but also put spellbook in the text. So that way the spellbook engine and spellbook of Secrets can also search it out, trying to remember the name, and Blue Boy gets you to it as well. Like, to have that crossover synergy, allow them to flow into each other and have it be smooth. That way they end up being support for both archetypes. I love that spellbooks already have like their own link too, yada yada yada, but yeah, I don't know exactly where I want them to go with the Magistus support. I just want them to connect it into these other archetypes. So I'm hoping over these OCG stories, maybe it's going to be there's a portion where focuses on like maybe each individual, kind of the way Magistus connects into each individual other archetype individually, and that's where we get a couple cards there, and then a couple cards, a couple cards from Witchcrafter, then a couple cards for Invoked, then a couple cards here, and then they go from there. That would actually be so sick if it's like 3 cards per one, but they actually do meaningful support that actually pushes them. That would actually be so cool. But as far as these individual archetypes go, Witchcrafters are cool because the Magistus engine already has their own fusion spell that's searchable. So that already is like sort of the connecting piece. If they just get better extension and ways to like get into it without like being too normal summon reliant, because like Witchcraft already kind of takes your normal, and then you want to use it on Ver if she searches you the poly card for Magistus, like, so you'd have to be weary of that stuff. But I think there's a world where they give support where it makes like, I don't know, maybe they give some sort of E-Tele card for Magistus, and then you're able to, like, without using your normal, get Ver and get a poly card pretty freely, and then you're able to still have your normal for the Witchcrafters and keep extending. That'd be really coal. I think they already have an okay base there, so that'd be really nice. For Demian's weird because it's Pendulum, and I don't know how exactly they would want to like fuse those two, because Magistus to this point has no Pendulum cards in it whatsoever, so that's definitely something that's like kind of odd. But this engine's fine already. I mean, between having Servant plus 3 copies of their Rhoda card, and now Magistus has their one in Demian guy, which is pretty good already because he can just equip the Link 1, and then the Link 1 searches a Magistus monster. There's already good value there, so they just need a good payoff, a better extender payoff. In my opinion, would also be huge for the Magistus stuff. But they could go a ton of ways. Honestly, I don't have that much of an opinion on this one. I want them to push it. I just don't know exactly how to do that because it's Pendulum based. Invoked is really interesting to me because this engine has always been so basic, so one note. It's either you open Meltdown or Alistair, you normal summon Alistair, and you make 1 fusion. That's what you do. But it would be so insanely cool if like they could combine these archetypes into some thing where like Invoked actually has lines that play through Alistair getting negated, like purely through its own stuff, not just its own stuff, but its own stuff maybe combined with the Magistus stuff, rather than just being like, oh, you know what, let's just play a second engine so that if this gets stopped, I get to, Nadir Servant and play from there. Maybe you could still play that, but having extra cards that actually allow you to push the Invoked engine specifically further would be so sick. It kind of feels bad that, like, for so many years people said, normal summon Alistair, I hate that deck, I hate that engine, to then maybe seeing, like, it actually flesh out into a full-on deck where it's like never been. It feels like it's always been part of a mishmash deck as just one of the better normal summon payoffs. That would be so cool to see. And maybe give you the potential to actually summon more than 1 invoked monster to your end board in the same turn would be so sick. To be able to end on like the Book of Moon guy plus Macabre would be so cool to see. So yeah, really cool, interesting stuff there. Maybe even build them out in a way where like the Link 2 is actually part of lines consistently because you have enough extenders to like run into those lines would be really sweet. So we'll see, but that's definitely something I keep an eye out for. And the last one here, Spellbooks. I kind of already mentioned this. This deck needs monsters. This deck just doesn't really use monsters. That's why you end up seeing it with like Dogmatica and engines like that to kind of just like add more oomph to it, because otherwise you just normal summon Spellbook, Magician of Prophecy, and then you just have 37 spells in your deck. But it's cool. I've always liked this archetype. I like the way it works. It feels like it's missing a couple things. One, it feels like the spells are very one note. They all just kind of search each other and rotate into each other, but the only payoff is really Fate. And I guess you could say Judgment, but to me, that's probably like maybe a one of in the deck. And so you just play that for when you kind of have everything and you just want to also get a ton of follow-up. But I think Fate's really the payoff, right? To get the non-target banish or the book, whatever you want. There is decent, but it's not enough, and it also takes a little bit of setup. So I'd love one other good spellbook card that helps push them a little bit more, and maybe it's an engine card. Maybe it's a card that allows you to get another spellbook monster out of the deck and onto the field, and the other solution would be give them an actual good main deck boss monster. They just don't have one, and this feels like the kind of archetype that would work with that pretty well. Just give them a decent, it's just a walking, maybe quick removal card by banishing spells in grave kind of thing, discarding a spell from hand kind of thing. I could see that actually working out pretty nicely, but right now it feels like Spellbook Magician of Prophecy, Blue Boy, is the only playable spellbook monster to the engine. So I'd love to see them expand that. Maybe it's, like I said before, a monster that has Spellbook plus Magistus in its name, so that both engines have some synergy and ways to connect there. And go from there. But I don't know. I'm really, really excited here. This is kind of a vague, kind of just let me talk about my overall thoughts here, just generic thoughts here, not getting too specific here on each archetype. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts down below here, though. Just in terms of what you'd want to see support-wise. Obviously, we need to see more stuff. Obviously, I've heard a lot of people talk about how they really want to see what happens with Zorua. Apparently, because Zorua is the last one revealed as support for Magistus, we really don't know what his story is all the way. So people really want to see what his deal is and how he's gonna funnel in here. More extract monsters, maybe. The deck, it's one of those weird decks where it has extract monsters, but you equip them more than you actually summon them, generally. So, maybe some better ways to extend into those. Maybe a Link 2 that helps push the engine. I don't know. We've seen broken Link 2s take over Yu-Gi-Oh! Though, so they have to be careful with that. But I think it could be something. But we'll see. All in all, I'm super excited. This is almost a straight-up guarantee that by the Magistus being on my archetypes, I think will get support this year, gets checked off. And so I'm happy for that, bare minimum. But I also want to see it actually be executed well. And that's the biggest thing I want to see. So I'm out of here for today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. As always, subscribe to the channel for more discussion videos like this one down the line. I'll see you in the next one. Let me know your thoughts on what you want to see for all these individual archetypes. Should they end up actually getting crossover support? And I'll see you in the next one. Peace.